Five people immortalized in products. Number 5. William Henry Boss Hoover. In fact, no personal details at all. The main reason is clear. He was little more than an early corporate figure who began manufacturing someone else's particular design in 1908 once the invention was already well established. It would make about as much sense to call a computer a Gates. Another quaint twist. Hoover was American. Yet it is the British who turned the Hooverito an eponymous generic word. It's rather as if Brits said hovercraft while Americans referred to the same machine as a cockerill, after its English inventor. From an outside perspective, one supposes the Hoover for Americans might refer to the 31st Pres. Or a rather shady figure caught up in events such as the aftermath of JFK's assassination. For the records, the vacuum cleaner was invented, as a manual machine, in 1868. The actual Hoover prototype with its unique rotating brush was the design of one James Murray Spangler. In fact, a classic case of Stigler's law of eponymy, of which numerous examples abound. No discovery is named after its original discoverer. Number 4. John Loudoun Macadam. Our present high-speed motorways and interstates can trace their origin back to the aristocratic second son of the Scottish Baron of Waterhead, sometime resident in the United States. His was one of the first serious advances in major national highway engineering since the excellent initial advances by the Romans. He became involved in this branch of civil engineering due to being an estate owner and turnpike trustee. Macadam's three essential innovations were to create a solid, compacted, well-drained foundation of rock and gravel, to raise the road surface above the surrounding ground level, and to incorporate a camber for surface drainage. The major later development was the addition of a sealed, tarred surface. As with so many important inventors or innovators, he scarcely benefited personally from his system, which was rapidly and widely adopted throughout Western civilization. One might even perhaps aptly consider that he was steamrollered politically. Number 3. John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich. The placing of a filling between bread had a long and partly accidental history before it was identified and named. Its earliest known example is considered to have been consumed during the Passover feasts of the ancient Hebrews, when unleavened bread similar to Indian chapatis or Mexican tortillas would have been used. The noble earl himself held various high diplomatic and military posts, as was typical for English aristocrats of the time. In public life he was noted for his incompetence and corruption. Sandwich was nevertheless buttered on the clean-cut side too, notably in his laudable and wholehearted support for Captain Cook's maritime explorations, which landed him the even more solid honor of having the Sandwich Islands named for him. However, when those were renamed the Hawaiian Islands, his memory was stuck with the edible double-decker. Various explanations are offered as to how he became associated with this early convenience food. One possibility is that being such a busy man, he preferred to take his meals in that cleaner form at his desk. Another suggestion has it that the dry bread on both sides kept his fingers clean during long gambling sessions of cards without him having to leave the table and wash them at intervals. The bread-based type has in turn led to a few culinary variations such as the sponge sandwich. Philological spin-offs include the sandwich course and being sandwiched between people in a crowd. Number 2. Henry Shrapnel. Common logic seems to suggest some eponymous names were inspired by their products, not vice versa. One that comes immediately to mind is Scrapper. Surely Thomas Scrapper's name must have been derived from second-hand allusion? Perhaps he was a lavatory cleaner or attendant? Not a bit of it. The unfortunate fellow is forever down among the order as a result of his own full-flush inventive mind. The same would seem to hold true for another Englishman, Henry Shrapnel. So well known are the shards of shells called shrapnel, that his family surely acquired its name from them. Not at all. Shrapnel, an active service army officer, was the inventor. His original design, a spherical cannon shell, exploded in midair, showering the enemy with lethal metal. It was the birth of a concept which ultimately led to the infamous cluster bomb. The system became used early on to counter the deployment of aircraft in wartime. Allied pilots of WW-1 call it Archie. German shell smoke was black, Allied white. We used to hear a shrapnel showering down on our roof during the Nazi Blitz raids of the 1940s, and as small boys would collect the fascinatingly shaped shiny stuff from the streets next morning. Shrapnel himself was one of the luckier inventors. He received a princely annual award of over $125,000, today's equivalent, for a life from a grateful British government. Number 1. Luigi Galvani. Italy enters the list with the scientist Galvani. A famous experiment with frogs' eggs led him to make the first connection between electricity and the movement of animate life. Thanks to a genial technical dispute with the better-known Volta about the essence and origin of organic electricity, he received from Volta the compliment of a direct current of electricity produced by chemical action being called galvanism. The dispute also led to Volta producing the first battery, and of course Volta also reaped his share of eponymous fame. Galvanism became an outmoded term, but was modified to the words galvanization and galvanized. These have become a permanent part of our vocabulary for metal plated by electrical process. They have also bequeathed us the figurative phrase galvanized into action.